I'm sorry if we're fucking up your plans, but we are the most intelligent, most educated, most experienced politically generation of voters this country has maybe ever seen.
Hello, and welcome back to In the Meanwhile. I'm Nora Kenworthy.
And I'm Marcus Harrison Green.
Marcus, I think we're both elder millennials. Love that term. I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of things that I look forward to in my life these days, aside from like a better parking spot at the Trader Joe's parking lot, that one that's actually wide enough for my car.
Do those exist? I mean, my God. Yeah.
Yeah, Trader Joe's is like it's like a whole emotional roller coaster parking there. But I think we have something to maybe look forward to this week.
That's what I hear, Nora. I have had that day marked, signed, sealed, and delivered, my friend, like I was freaking Stevie Wonder. Because that means it's election day, November 4th, baby. And it is that magical time when democracy puts on her sequined gown, takes one too many shots of hope, and stumbles into the after party like, wait, did I text Max or did I just elect him?
Yeah, well, I think we all know which one of those happened last
Oh,
November.
God. Tell
Actually,
me.
it was more like that scene in The Hangover when they all wake up in a hotel room in Vegas and there's like a live tiger in their room. They're like, "What did we do last night?" That's, that's how that one felt.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, Election Day is that magical time when we're all supposed to feel inspired by democracy, but mostly we feel like the civic process has been cheating on us for years and still has the audacity to ask for our vote, like, babe, I've changed.
Exactly. And I will tell you, as a journalist, I will confirm it that election season brings out the worst in people. And quite frankly, the worst people. I've been called everything from Uncle Clarence Thomas to Tupac Shakur by the same person 3 days apart. When I really wish I could reverse engineer that level of cognitive dissonance, but I can't. I can't. Nora.
Damn. No wonder you're looking forward to election day.
Yes.
uh I don't know. I'm trying to think of something nice to say. Like we all got a little Clarence Thomas and a little Tupac inside of us, but
That's what the
I
Buddhists would say, right? I mean,
yeah, I don't know, but are we quoting Dear Mama or are we like taking bribes while blaming mothers for needing food assistance? Like I think I know what team I'm on.
Yeah, no, I was about to curse there, but I will say, yes, right now, a lot of people's appetites are certainly for what happens after the election because it is, and I try to remind people this all the time, and for some reason, it falls on indifference, I guess. But like, voting is not the grand final; it is the opening credits to democracy.
Exactly. The real work comes in between, that unsexy work where you build coalitions and change culture and remind your community that we the people is not just a slogan, it is a full-time job.
Yeah, and that's a job that unfortunately has gotten a lot harder. As of this
Yes.
taping, the federal government's still shut down, which means nearly 42 million Americans, that is 1 in 8 people, folks, could lose their food stamps next week.
That is 42 million people who are being forced to decide between groceries, rent, medicine, the essentials of survival. And it really does feel like this is what happens when a nation built on abundance chooses austerity willfully, and
Yes.
when a land of prosperity becomes a slogan only for those who are already highly prosperous.
Yeah, and meanwhile, the same government that can't fund, dinner for families of five is fully funding White House renovations. I don't know. Our Congress can skip votes to extend healthcare benefits, but the White House can put in new marble countertops. I guess that's where their priorities lie at this point.
Actually, to be fair, we haven't actually seen any building of new White House. We've actually just seen destruction, which is a good
You know what?
metaphor for where everything is right now. So,
That that is very true. I guess I was being a little too
oh,
hopeful and a little a
yeah.
little less than skeptical as I should have been, I suppose.
Hold off on the gold trim for a little while longer. No, but this is exactly the point, right? Elections can decide who gets the microphone, but organizing decides who gets fed. And that's why we really wanted to talk with someone who knows how to do this work, how to build power after the polls close, before they close, and all the times in between.
Absolutely. That is why I'm so pleased that our guest today is Charles Douglas III. He's the executive director of Common Power, an organization focused on civic education, long term engagement, and what they call on ramps to democracy.
So we're catching him at a fascinating moment. It's the tail end of a few truly progressive, exciting races from Zoran Monbani in New York to Katie Wilson here in Seattle, and in the tailspin of a government that can't even keep the lights on.
Yeah, so how do we move from electoral whiplash to real sustained progress? How do we turn that shared frustration and that sense that the system's rigged into collective power rather than individual resentment?
I guess we're about to find out. Well, Charles, first of all, thank you so much for being with us today. It feels like a really consequential time to have this conversation. We wanted to start by just acknowledging some of the context that we're speaking to you in. You were at the tail end of several inspiring progressive races across the country
Hmm.
with candidates like Zoran Mandani and our own Katie Wilson, who have refused to compromise their principles or their communities in order to win endorsements and votes.
Yeah. Thank God.
Thank God, right? And yet, we're also in this moment where a lot of us are watching millions of Americans, including our family members and our neighbors, being abandoned, not just by the federal government, but also by their own parties. Um, and so, as we head towards what feels like a consequential election day, what are you hoping to see from voters? But I think maybe even more importantly, what are you hoping to see more of from elected leaders?
So I hope that this moment is one where the country decides who it wants to be, and that actually incorporates the opinions of younger generations. Um, and I feel like this is our last shot at this.
Mm.
Um, the the thing that this election will tell me is if the opinions of young people matter anymore in the political world through the established systems. So that's the one big thing I'm looking for. People have for years, when I say people, I mean like older generations, political people have said, where are the young people at? Why don't they get involved? And yada, yada, yada. Where can we find them? This year, young people are like, we're here. We want this person. We want this person for these reasons because we can't afford to live in these places where y'all live. We can't afford to have the things that y'all have, this American dream that you have described for us and sold to us based on these principles. You have not
Hmm.
let us have this. And so we are going to choose people that will give us this stuff that you said we're supposed to have. If this election doesn't turn out with a result that listens to those voters, I think that America will be even more broken than it is today. And so I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about that actually, because I don't know the way it's going to go. I'm looking at turnout right now, and turnout is low. I'm looking at the share of young people that have voted so far, both in New York and in Seattle, and it's not awesome, right? So I don't know which way it's going to go. So that's on the voters. I think that elected officials, I think the story has kind of been written on them already. If you are a, a senator, House member, a mayor, and you've been in office for years, for decades, and you've been successful, that is great. I am happy for you. And also, you have failed us. In this moment, you're not winning. You're not.
Hmm.
And in the same way that, a pitcher gets taken out if they're throwing, if their balls are getting hit over the fence, or a CEO gets replaced who'd been there for years, knocking it out for some Fortune 500 company. y- when your time is up, it's time to go. And it's time for someone else with fresh legs, a fresh arm, fresh ideas to come in. And those elected officials need to know that is this moment. That is this moment. You may have been that dude a decade ago. You're not that dude now. This is not your time, and you should give up the mic willingly. And that's the biggest issue is they know their time has passed and they're not getting out the way. So those are my two, the voters and the leaders. That's where I am. And if you can hear it in my voice, I'm a little little frustrated.
I couldn't notice, man. No, I so recently I actually had the pleasure to meet you in person finally, and
Hmm.
uh during our conversation, I can't forget you had said that, and let me make sure that I'm phrasing correctly, but you had basically said that, if you look at our politics today, it's less about left versus right, and it's a lot more about top versus bottom. And I'm thinking of that particularly in the framing, of what we see here in Seattle, where there's a mayoral race where it's a Democrat versus a Democrat. Same with New York, where it's a
Hmm.
Democrat versus a Democrat. So I want to ask you, sort of, what does that framing of top versus bottom sort of reveal about how power is operating in this day and age?
Yeah, I think it's about money, and maybe it always has been. The thing that has happened though is that the laws have made it easier for powerful people and folks with money to control the destiny of our country and to do it in front of us. I think that's the biggest difference. So much of this has happened behind the scenes, and it's been kind of papered over, and we have not had access to this stuff going on, and the folks doing that have been less like flagrant about it, and it just seems like they don't give a shit, and they're gonna throw around their money and their power, and so we know we're calling bullshit on it, and I think that this is a breaking point. I think that the limits of that have been reached, and um, I think that moneyed interest, the control they have over people, and this is people across the board. This is why I said it's not a left and a right thing, right? The alliance that is getting behind Zoran Mamdani are people who voted for um, Obama and then Trump and then Biden and then Trump, right? And these are people who are like, listen, I don't know what's going on with my life. I don't know what kind of issues there are, but I'm trying as hard as I can, and nobody's helping me. Who's going to help me? Who's going to help me this year? Who's going to help me in 2016? Who's going to help me in 2020? Who's going to help me in 2024? And they're just like, I'll vote for whoever sounds like they're going to help me the most. Uh, and these are folks who they're swinging across the political spectrum. And what that tells me is it doesn't matter. The political spectrum does not matter. The one unifying thing in this country that is unifying the most voters, disenfranchised or not, and we can talk about that because I think there are more of us than there are of them. And the only way they win is they make it so it's harder for us to vote. The unifying thing is that we can't afford to live in the places where we want to live. We can't afford a home. We can't afford to feed our SNAP benefits about to run out. We can't afford to feed the people we love. That's the unifying factor right now.
I so appreciate this perspective, and I want to follow up and push a little
Yeah,
bit further
let's
on
do it.
this because I think one thing we've seen in a lot of political races recently is establishment Democrats saying, well, in order to do the economic thing, we got to bail on all these other communities. And actually, Tressie McMillan Cotton has an amazing column to this effect in the New York Times
Mm,
today, kind of responding to all the stuff that's gone down with Graham Plattner. And in it, she says, their rhetoric, the conventional wisdom that flows from it, suggests that we cannot talk about economic solutions without abandoning our commitment to the Black, Latino, gay, transgender, and female poor that are the lifeblood of the Democratic Party's base. The conceit at the heart of that belief is that poor white people are too racist and too uniquely ignorant of their own racism to vote in their best interests. And therefore, Democrats have to accept a little racism in order to win the working class. How are you pushing against that, idea, and how do you also see really successful candidates like Katie Wilson, like Zohran Mamdani, running against that sort of establishment democratic belief in the conflict between class and other identities?
mm. Yeah, that's good. I think, and I have to read that article, but the Graham Plattner thing that you're mentioning is really interesting because they were ready to throw him out just because he posted a bunch of stuff on social media. And if that's the case, then we're never going to have an elected official ever again from that generation or younger because everybody has said some shit online that's wild when they were young. Um, and also, people should be able to make mistakes and then come back. That's the reason why we think that folks who've been disenfranchised, and their votes taken away when they had felonies should get the right to vote back, because we're better than the worst mistake we've ever made in our lives. Um, I think more broadly, the first of all, that the narrative around focusing on one thing or another, or saying that we've got to ditch like certain words and certain community needs is just uh, hot consultant garbage. Okay, that's what that is, and it's a class of people who have made their wealth getting money from these corporations that are now people under the law, right? And pointing towards, some result that they feel like they can provide for their millionaires and billionaires. Um, I think that the thing we see from these leaders, and this is why they were not able to predict Zoran Mamdani's primary win or Katie's, and then also not understand how much they would win by, because they actually don't understand a narrative that is multiple things at once. They don't understand a narrative that is centered around love and care for multiple people or all of us together and what that could be. Because they don't even come from that. Like they can't explain it, they can't measure it, they don't see it, they don't hear it because they don't live that way.
That's so true.
These are people who thrive in a community that is selfish and is centered around the accumulation of wealth and power. And so they don't get it and they can't articulate it. And we shouldn't trust their advice or their opinions, period. Um, Completely. Yeah, that's the way I feel about that. Fuck them.
Well,
Yeah, Tressie in our column calls this the polling
Yeah.
addiction, which is
Mhm.
convinced these sort of politicos that the middle class that we're supposedly always kowtowing to is only white and male. And yeah, I think she's amplifying a lot of what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, the other part of that is, all the polling told us that we were gonna win the election last fall. And it didn't shine a light anywhere on young people, on young men, on a swing of Black voters and Latino voters to the right in this massive way that they swung. No polling showed us that. So, like, polling is that, especially from that class, is just is bullshit. And that's also why, for me and my organization and the people who, are moving with us and have shifted our focus from 2024 to 2025, we're listening to different people. Like these voters who swung right for largely economic reasons are coming from all over the country, and they're not easy to poll. They listen to podcasts, they're listening to social media. Like they're coming from a different place and they're speaking to a different set of influencers and leaders. And we need to listen to them more.
yeah, and I actually have a follow up to Nora's follow up in terms of the other side of the coin, if you will, where there's some elected officials who continue to sort of cynically weaponize identity in races. How do we have these conversations around that sort of a broader view of things, right? Where it's like, yes, we do live in a society, quite frankly, where candidates of color are, do get attacked still, by the media, and a lot of times unfairly. I mean, you just had Jasmine Crockett recently, who was attacked by the president when he said that she couldn't pass a cognitive test or whatever, and that he would do better on it. I'll take the bet that she can, but
100%.
whatever, but that's neither here nor there. But you also, right, but then you also have a in the same token, you also have a society where where identity and color and race is weaponized in order to provide cloud cover, right, for people, for
Hmm.
powerful elites. So what is that conversation like?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've had that
Oh
conversation in
yeah.
your role at
Yeah,
Common Power.
it's interesting because it's evolved in the last like 5 years, right? Like the Black Lives Matter movement highlighted for everybody. I mean, some of us are living through it. We're born into this. Um, uh, the conversation is more nuanced though now, because it was notice this is happening, lift up these voices of these people with these identities. And what it's evolved to, because we have also in the same time become more um politically intelligent, because experienced in this Trump decade, right? I think more people now know about voting and the government than we ever wanted to, right? I didn't give a shit what culture was, before, or like 60 votes in the Senate and all that. Like, no, people didn't know that shit before. Or the makeup of their national government and local government. Like, people understand more about politics now, whether they wanted to or not. And that mixed with the conversation around race means that, hey, we're actually looking at this more nuanced now. You can't just be, uh, a black and Asian brother and be like, because of my genetic makeup, I'm gonna look out for black and Asian people, like and I'm black and Asian. Okay, so this is with me and Bruce is this like multi-leveled conversation. That's why when he looks at me, sometimes he's confused. But he's like,
His double
man, I
ganger,
don't.
right?
He's like, I
The
don't get it.
multiverse
Yeah,
version.
exactly. I'm
Nah.
the multiverse. He's like, I don't get it, man. We're supposed to be down with each other, brother. We're supposed to be. And I'm like, yeah, you know what being down for black and Asian people mean? It means actually coming up with policies that serve them. Full stop. That's what it means. It don't mean that like I get to be on the poster and that's enough for us. Like, we're past that. That's the previous generation what y'all were fighting for, and it was meaningful. It was like we were looking for just the bare minimum, and so for our people to be on TV and on stage and in leadership roles, it was like boom, that was it. It was, everyone disenfranchised, women too, right? And now it's like, okay, we've done that, and what we're looking for is more now, both because we are more sophisticated and also because the system breakdown is so acute and it's so laid out in front of us, and we're all more intelligent about the way the systems work. Like, we demand more. Like, we're like more intelligent shoppers now. We're like, cool, like I get how this works now. I would like that, and also I want you to have policies that last out into the future. And I want to address this root cause. Actually, I don't want you to give me a school backpack for my kid. I actually want childcare for my kid. I don't want you to hand out meals. I want you to not make me have to need free meals. Like that. That's like, hey, we want more. That's what we want, right? And we want our people to want more. And that's the part that I think that Bruce is missing, that his people who are backing him are missing, that anybody who is pushing back against young leaders who have an economic populist message is that we get it now, y'all. We understand. And I'm sorry if we're fucking up your plans, but we are the most intelligent, most educated, most experienced politically generation of voters this country has maybe ever seen. And because of the internet, information being passed around is now more democratic. So I get to hear the truth from multiple angles and not just the ones that you filter through to me. And then I get to create content and activate more people and mobilize folks. Like, we're ready. I understand it feels dire right now, but we are ready to push back against this shit. So, we know we don't take the simple shit anymore. It's not just you showing up looking nice, bro. We need real shit and real improvement in our lives.
Yes.
Amen. Yes.
So let's actually talk about how Common Power is doing some of this work, right, to
Mm.
push against the status quo. You have often spoken about how your work really goes far beyond just getting out the vote. You're building relationships, leadership, political education. You're teaching people how to ask for a very different kind of politics. Why is that kind of deep year-round organizing and education so critical, especially in a moment when a lot of people feel disillusioned or underserved by politics?
So the reality about the Trump decade and being politically active in this period is that it's no longer okay for cyclical or seasonal involvement. Like, we have to be able to show up and the times when we plan, right? So every November there's an election, there's a primary at certain points, and we have to show up during times that we don't plan for, special
Mhm.
elections, times where the community is in need, or the voters that you talk to about voting also have a different need in that moment, and this year especially, where we've had to show up in force as a national community to to walk the streets, to protest on a weekly basis
Mhm.
at federal buildings, at Tesla dealerships, et cetera. This calls for a different kind of capacity. And what we've learned, and we're now in our eighth year here uh, doing this work, is that the reason why we're able to both show up for these big things that we know, like the midterms coming up next year, and also the special elections, and also federal building protests that happen every week, for example, is because we invest in the people who do the work, and we make sure that their lives, that their ability to live in a Seattle, um, or a blue city is not a struggle. And I think that's the kind of the if we pull back, the broader moment that's being asked of us is not just to show up. It's not just this individual ask to show up more. If you are the leader of an organization or you control resources, the ask of you is to make sure that people can show up as much as we're asking them. It's to make sure that there's a system in place that supports these people to show up as much as they're needed so that we can push back. And that takes money. It takes intelligent systems that are robust and also nimble so that they can adapt to this ever changing political environment. And it takes a vision that is further out into the future than just ringing the alarm bells and shouting fire every time we're under duress. And that's tough. That's a tough message for people. But in a city that has built massive corporations that have taken small ideas and made them repeatable and sold them across the country and across the world, we can do better when it comes to standing up to authoritarianism and doing it in a way that's sustainable. And that's what Common Power does.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked a little bit about sort of what needs to be done, once quote unquote the money dries up and so forth. And so I guess I want to ask you that after, you know, election day, November 4th, what happens, between election cycles? How are we supposed to keep people engaged, right? When you have a lot of people who are exhausted, and and we were joking before before we hit record on this that the the election isn't the climax or even the intermission, right? It's just a stop along the way. And so what strategies have you all been using to make sure that people continue to sustain attention and engagement?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I appreciate about this kind of thought and this kind of question is that the answer to how is one that people ask all the time, individually, organizationally. And the great thing about where we are in this moment is that we don't actually have to start from zero. This is not a reinvent the wheel moment. We walk in the footsteps of, and with actually, because they're still alive, people who have successfully pushed back against powerful moneyed interests and won their rights. And those people are all around us, and we're fortunate to have that. So the first thing we do is we go back to history, and we like literally, my organization, we travel to the South, and we talk to the civil rights leaders who are still around, and the foot soldiers, not even just the leaders, but just the foot soldiers who were there on Bloody Sunday, who to help to move the country forward on civil rights and voting rights. And we learned from them what they did literally to sustain, the joy and the community and the singing and the food and the showing up in person again and again and again. Um, like these are and also the systems, the kind of like taxi Uber service that they built to get through the Montgomery bus boycott. That's something that people they don't talk about, like the system that they built in order to make it through this massive year-long demonstration, or the shadow government in Selma that they put together because they couldn't trust the white government. And so how did they manage themselves and manage the influx of people who traveled in to volunteer, and keep that movement alive through the years that it was fighting for? those are the kinds of things that we take notes on and we incorporate into how common power is moving. And so, yeah, voting first, because the right to vote, we believe, is the most common power that we all should have. That's why we're so named, right? That is the right that we all should have, and we don't. And if we all had it, man, this country would be a better place. It would be a much different place. So that's what we're fighting for.
If only, man. If only. Yeah.
If only, right? If only, man, if only. Um, so, when after election day, coming up here in a week from today, after election day, we are going to lean into community, because there's going to be some folks that, are feeling some type of way about the results, and we're going to help walk them through it. And we're gonna go back to Selma. We're gonna go back to Alabama and learn from them. The staff is going to recharge, and we're going to lean into education, educating people about leaders during times like this, and how they got through it, and communities like ours, and how they got through it, and start to mobilize again for next year. And it's local mobilization stuff that we're going to be doing in the Seattle and Washington area. We're going to be mobilizing in other parts of the country, and it's just kind of, how's everybody doing? Are you checking on your neighbors? Are you checking on the folks who are fighting alongside you in the previous election? And what do they need to continue right now, so that we can be ready for the next fight? And that's just it is everyone taking care of everybody else, staying rooted in history, and doing what we can to still put one foot in front of the other.
Amen to that. Your comments also make me think of some of the most kind of successful elected officials, but also candidates in the last couple of years have also been actively engaged in helping communities relearn how to do a lot of this work. So I'm thinking of AOC sitting down with Miriam Kaba in the early months of the COVID pandemic and running these webinars on how to do mutual aid. But also, we have candidates right now like Kat, I'm going to butcher her last name, Abu Ghazala. Is that right?
Yeah, Abu Ghazala.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
In
she's been
Illinois.
doing all of this like mutual aid, feeding people. Like her campaign headquarters are also like a food pantry. Like
Yeah.
I really feel like it's kind of changing the game on
Mm.
even what an election campaign looks like when you use it to bring people together, not just to vote you into office, but to help them rediscover community and collective survival.
Yeah, yeah. This is and Zoran doing the soccer match, and
Yes.
the scavenger hunt, and showing people that, campaigning and running for office can be fun, and it can be communal and collective. Yeah, it is totally. It's when I see Kat do stuff, because she also did like a she was like, "Bro, I'm not gonna make phone calls for donations
Yeah.
anymore. I'm gonna go on Twitch
Yeah.
for, a couple days and make money off, just try to raise money through Twitch."
And she was like hosting punk shows and stuff. Like
Yeah. And she gave a campaign speech at a comedy club, and did like stand up with a PowerPoint behind her. Yeah, I think that, that moments like this, where we're under massive strain and we're pushed to our limits, and there's a breakdown of systems and everything. It's not just a moment where it's just a lot of terribleness around us. What increases, or what's highlighted, are the necessities that folks have or are losing, or need, and that is the mother of invention. And so you're seeing all of this innovation, because necessity has sparked all of these brand new thoughts about how we can do politics, how we can come together and push back against things, how we can sustain under duress. And the innovation is through the roof right now, and we are completely reinventing how we do all of these different things. And that's why, that to the degree that we can talk about a future that has hope in it, the turnaround from this deep dark moment is so amazing. The leaders that are going to come out of this, the survival instincts and tactics that are going to come out of this, people's appetite for better and to know more is gonna flourish. Like it's a I'm looking at like a renaissance period in this country that's about rebuilding what we've never had, but have always dreamt for. And that is exciting to me. That's something that I think about when I wake up in the morning and I think about what's what are all these people gonna do and what we can do. That's one of the things that keeps me going is what's possible, and there's so many bright lights showing us what that is right now.
Yeah. I love that motivation is that keeps you going is focusing on what's possible. Because I will tell you, I was walking by down Rainier Avenue in Columbia City a couple
Mhm.
weeks ago, and a friend of mine, I'm looking through the one of the windows in the bars. It had just opened, and he already had a shot of, of Jack Daniels and a beer, and it's like a Tuesday, and I'm like, you is that everything all right? And he's like, have you read the news, right?
Yeah.
And so not shaming at all. I get why so many folks are resigned to what's going on. But with that being said, one of the things that I very much admire about you as a human being and also Common Power as an organization is the way that you all are able to balance sort of the short term, immediate sort of threats, if you will, with sort of the long term strategy and planning. And so can you just talk a little bit more about that and how you guys are able to have sort of that balance of yes, there are these things that are going on. I mean, obviously, we see Russell Vought,
Mm.
the Trump's, I guess, for lack of a better term, his budget guru, who
Mhm.
is doing a lot of
You
destruction
mean
right
his
now.
Project
chief
2025.
henchman?
Yeah,
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 henchman.
yeah.
There you go. Henchman. Yeah, and it's like Stephen Miller, who's his
Yeah.
advisor. It's like the Avengers, a symbol of evil or something, at
Mhm.
times. But you're obviously able to fight these immediate threats. As we talk, it looks like there's not going to be any. I shouldn't say there's not going to be any funding for WIC. There's not going to be a will for any funding of WIC and food stamps
Yeah.
here in the next week. Even though there certainly could be, but you're obviously balancing again these immediate threats with sort of the slower, more patient work of building a durable, civic infrastructure. So
Mhm.
can you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, yeah, I think, the elections as a framework um, like, moving people towards something, it it feels like an old kinda, like, an establishment way of thinking. The reality of power in this country is that it is still a mathematical thing, right? Unless you believe that we should just tear it all down, and there's some people who are kinda on that road where they're like, "Let it all fall and we'll build it back." That's a long, long road, brother. People who believe that, man, that's a long road, and I feel like if we get there, I'm with you. I don't think we're there yet, and I still think that we can win electorally. This November is gonna in a few days, we're gonna find out, who's right about this. But the electoral map gives you this kind of like this this timeline of ways that you could possibly regain power, right? We People talk about the midterms, but we've already had a handful of US House races this year. And Common Power has been in every single one of them, by the way. I told people at the beginning of this year, and my team still gets mad at me when they're reminded of this. But I told every single house race we're going to go to, we're going to participate in every single house race because they mean something. Because there's a possibility of flipping one of these things. We know we got to win them back because the math in the house, but they mean something to the communities where we go and knock doors. They mean something to the volunteers who are doing this work. And so everything that you participate in is not just about winning. It's about the trying, actually. And so the counterbalance to these kind of like hard dates that feel like they are so establishment, and they feel like they're kind of in this like political world that most people don't get a chance to touch. The counterbalance to that is actually the ethos around the struggle that so many African Americans have grown up with. And the way that I communicate that to people who are new to it is that the goal is actually to try. That's the goal. And there is no certainty of a destination, an end, or a win. And I say this right after talking about elections, but that's the counterbalance. Like this is the duality of competing in elections and trying to win, and also having a community, a volunteer force that understands that the trying to win is actually the point, is what we need. That is actually what we need. We need to push for change and want very specific things. And we also have to move forward so that whether we get those things or not, we are still intact as a community. We're still strong. We're still finding joy in certain places. And that's something that is embedded in the African American culture. That is how we got through slavery. That is how we got through Jim Crow, and after Reconstruction, it's how we have pushed through inequality in this country. The wealth inequality hit us first and lasted longer. It's because we are able to do both. We're able to both ask for very specific things and fight for specific change, and also win or lose, we still maintain the love and the joy and the resilience and the camaraderie and the unity and all of that. And that's what I'm from Tacoma, Washington. Okay. I don't know what people in Seattle think about Tacoma, Washington. Depends on how old you are. But I grew up, the first 10 years of my life was on a hilltop in Tacoma during the 80s. And so much of what I bring to movement building and electoral political work and volunteer work is rooted in kind of the principles of that community. And it's it's made it during these tough times more simple and maybe easier for me to see a way through. And as much as I can, I'm trying to get people to learn and live through those principles as well.
Well, we really love that perspective here. I think one of our core practices here is to find joy in the everyday and find ways of celebrating um, life and resilience, even in the midst of how horrific things are right now. Um, it sounds like your staff gets a well deserved rest after next Tuesday, but you've also been talking as an organization about really going on the offensive for
Yeah.
2026. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to fight against. I just saw this completely terrifying article in The Atlantic about how we're not going to really get to 2026 or really have a fair election in 2026. There's plenty of things that we could read and keep ourselves up with at night, worrying about. But can we, like, what's the game plan? What are you guys doubling down on as you head towards 2026?
Yeah, so the game plan this year, it started this year. Win every House election we can. If we can't win it, shrink the margins, right? Send a message, make them play defense. We knocked on doors in 2 House races in Florida, in one of the reddest areas in Florida. I went to college in Florida. If there's anyone from Florida, I'm sorry, I can't stand Florida. I can't, I can't stand it. I can't stand the news that comes out of it. I don't like how they vote. I know there's people down there I know, but we still, if we compete in red areas, right, and we shrink margins, meaning if there's a place in Florida that voted for Trump by 30 points in the next major election, cut that margin by half, right? 15 points. We've sent a message to the people strategically who are on the other side that they need to defend places like Florida now, right? Before they would be like, we don't have to spend any money there, any volunteers in that space. And now all of a sudden they have to defend that district or any district that looks like that. That means an R plus 10, Republican plus 10 district that went for Trump by 10 points last year is at risk all over the country. So that now strategically, they don't know what to do. So we are competing everywhere. My team does not get a break after November 4th because we have to go win an election in Tennessee because there's actually a U.S. House race in Tennessee the first week of December. So we're going to be there the week before Thanksgiving, knocking on doors in Tennessee, and there are people already signed up to go and travel with us from all over the country to go knock doors. So it is we need to get the House seats that we can back, and we've done that. We did it in Virginia, we did it in Arizona. We're working on one in Texas, Christian Menifee. We knocked on doors for him this past weekend. So we got to win our house seats back. We got to take house seats from them. And that's number one. The next one is we're knocking on doors in California for the redistricting that they're doing there. So if we're going to have any chance at the US House, some of these states got to redraw their maps. California they're on the verge of doing it. Things are looking good there. Other blue states where there are blue trifectas also have to redraw their maps. Full stop. Gerrymandering is terrible. It sucks that we have to do it, but we have to do it. And so those initiatives are going to roll out around the country. We're going to need people to knock doors to help get those passed all over the country. And that's the second priority. The next one is, if we can, the Senate's tough, but we're going to be knocking on doors in Georgia for John Ossoff. We're going to knock on doors, wherever we've got to, or wherever we can to maybe take back the Senate. If not, we want them again to play defense there. But it's the U.S. House, it's the U.S. Senate, and then to the extent that we can protect elections in some of these states and get blue trifectas and or secretaries of state in these states, that is our top priority. Now, the other side of this, where you talked about that Atlantic article, there is an alternate reality where we don't get to compete in the midterm elections. All right. That's a legit possibility. If that happens, what are we going to need? Okay. We're going to need blue states that are strong enough to protect themselves, that are sanctuaries for people that are going to be fleeing from other states. It's already started, right? If you're a family that has a trans kid and you're in a red state, you're getting the fuck out. You've already started, right? If you're a woman who needs reproductive care and wants to make your own decisions and you live in a red state, you are already trying to get out. And the places where you're going to be fleeing to are all along the West Coast. It's going to be Illinois, it's going to be Colorado, and it's going to be the Northeast. If nothing else, what we need to do in this country so that we protect our people and then protect people who need to flee what's going on in their state is that we need to make our blue states stronger. And that's where one Common Power is setting up hubs all over the country that are volunteers that have knocked on doors with us that are going to continue to do that work locally. And we need to build coalitions with the other organizations in those states. So the work that we're doing is for each of these eventualities. It's if we have free and fair elections, then cool. Let's try to win those. And if we don't, we are still going to need a network of volunteers all over the country that can continue to push back against authoritarianism however they can, and also survive because good needs to survive in this country. That's what we're doing.
Well, man, Charles, I think that is a perfect place to end it. This was just a tremendous, tremendous conversation, and I very much just appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Let's do this. Let's do it every week. It just helps me work through some stuff, just, get some stuff off my chest and, get some ideas out there.
It's cheaper than therapy, right?
That's right.
Honestly, this was way more reassuring than a lot of conversations I've had about electoral politics recently. So I will take this therapy as well.
Absolutely. Nora, I gotta say, there are a lot of times where I finish these conversations and I just be honest with our listeners, I'm very well educated, from something, and I've been given insight, but that might have been the most hopeful conversation we've had, quite frankly, in a long, long time. And
Yes.
I'm very grateful to Charles for having it.
Pragmatically hopeful. Yeah.
Yes.
And at
Yes.
a time where I'm usually just spinning my wheels with anxiety, I found it weirdly calming and reassuring. So that was a lovely dose of anti-anxiety medicine ahead of the election.
Yes, absolutely. This is the first pre-election conversation I've had where I haven't had, I haven't wanted to just go hide in a dark closet somewhere and come
Yes.
out on November 5th. So here
Yes.
we are.
Yes. And hopefully you won't be getting too many more abusive text messages ahead of the
I
election either.
I mean, knock on wood on that. Well, knock on wood on that. That being said, why don't we roll into our 8 ounces of joy for this week, Nora?
Yeah. I mean, first, I would say I am so glad that we got some joy from this conversation, and
Yes.
I could really feel that in this conversation. This wasn't planned, but mine, I think, is very similar to a lot of what Charles was saying,
Mhm.
which is it was such a rough week in terms of news, and yet
Yeah.
all around me, I just saw people just sitting down or standing up and being like, "I'm gonna do something." So many people just, like,
Yeah.
waking up every day and being like, "I'm gonna figure out something to do." Like, no one wants or asked for this, like, looming food crisis that snap cuts are about to bring about, and yet, my life is full of people who are figuring out how to do something even with very little. We've got rising inflation, rising housing costs, insurance premiums that are about to go through the roof, and a lot of normal people, like, woke up to the news this week and they figured out what they could do. We've got neighbors distributing food packages, setting up free meals, circulating lists of where to get free food. My colleagues at New Disabled South announced funds to support disabled Southerners losing SNAP benefits throughout the
Mm.
US. An Oregon coffee shop raised nearly $90,000 this week to
Jeez.
offer free meals to neighbors. There are community fridges that are thriving and have been thriving for years across Seattle that are getting restocked. And so I just I felt a lot of gratitude for everyone who just kind of woke up this week and just asked themselves, like, what is one thing that
Yes.
I can do? Right.
Yes.
And I'm also equally grateful for every morning when I wake up in a body that can offer things, right? And
Yeah.
in a headspace where I can figure out what I'm able to do. So
Yeah.
just a lot of gratitude this week.
Yeah, and we didn't plan this, but to me, it's an excellent segue into my 8 ounces of joy. I found out over the weekend that a uh, colleague of mine passed away. Barbara Golden was her
Oh,
name.
I'm
She,
sorry.
yeah, thank you. I had met her
Mm,
via the Unitarian Church. She was a member, I want to say, of the Unitarian Church out in Bainbridge Island, and I spoke there a couple times, and we would communicate, and she was a person who, she had, I want to say she had two or three different properties, and one of her properties was this condo in Queen Anne with her husband, and she would allow, her friends who were involved in activism and social justice and the creative pursuits to use it if they ever needed a respite. And I remember early on when I founded the South Seattle Emerald, the paper that I found helped to found with my mother 12 years ago. And you're just going through burnout because you're working 60 or
yeah.
70, hour weeks and so forth. She would open up her home to me in Queen Anne, and I was able to use this, luxurious, Queen Anne condo and go to the rooftop and just relax
Mhm,
and chill out. And it was just a way to recharge. And she didn't just do that for me. I mean, she did that for so many people who were involved, in the fight to try to make progress in this world. And, it was a small thing, but at the same time, it multiplied by however many people she did that for. And two, it was something that had, it was, it's ripples that created so many waves in so many people's lives. And so
mm,
to your point about, folks just doing one act of kindness and doing it consistently, it can truly just add up in people's lives. And so I
yeah.
just wanted to, shout out Barbara Golden for her life, for the things that she did,
Hmm.
for the kindness that she put out in the world, and just for that reminder that yeah, no matter what, no matter how dark it gets, as the comedian Dick Gregory said, kindness are end up being sparks in darkness, right? That no matter how dark it is, the tiniest spark reminds you that is something to combat the darkness. So much love to you, Barbara Golden, and to the whole Golden family.
Well, I can't think of a better place to end it on. So, friends, if your emotions this week are more dysregulated, then shout out to Clarence Thomas's professional
He's
ethics.
got a lot of shout
You
outs this episode. No.
I'm just working with the theme here. I'm working with
Fair
the
enough.
theme.
Fair enough.
You know you're in the right place. So, Hop on the hot mess party bus that is this electoral season and buckle your seatbelts, but we're going to be with you the whole ride. We're so glad that you spent some time with us. Let's all get out and vote and then keep on organizing.
Hear, hear. And just a huge thanks to Charles Douglas III for joining us this week. In the Meanwhile, it's produced and emotionally stabilized by Jessica Partnow, and we are blessed to enjoy music from Oham Aluo. You can find In the Meanwhile by tuning in to KVRU Wednesdays at 5 p.m. or find our full episodes wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky.
By subscribing or donating to the show at inthemeanwhile.com, you provide crucial support for our work. Throw in a few extra dollars this week so that Marcus can work through those very confusing Tupac Clarence Thomas comparisons with his therapist, please. I think he's going to need it.
I can attest to that, yes.
You can donate and find episodes at inthemeanwhile.com. New episodes drop every Friday. And until then, we'll see you in the meanwhile.